Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, so that we can get this event started, may I please request, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that all of us will please rise as the control will give us the national anthem. I'll kindly request that we remain on our feet as I invite the Very Reverend Father, Dr. Donatus Udoite, a member of the planning committee for this summit, and the Vicar General of the Catholic Diocese of Uyo, to kindly do well to come to this microphone, Father, and lead us in brief opening prayers.
Shall we pray? Shall we raise our thanksgiving to God as we together sing? The steadfastness of the Lord never ceases. His mercy is never come to an end. They are new every moment, new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness, O Lord. Great is thy faithfulness. God our Father, we thank you with all our hearts for your faithfulness as we gather this morning as a state to look into issues concerning our development. We thank you for bringing us from far and near to be here, granting us safe journey. We pray that you stay with us. We pray that you direct us. We pray that you guide us. In all the deliberations that we shall be doing today and tomorrow, and subsequently the results that will come therefrom, we ask you to be the light and the guide, so that our state will grow higher and higher. As we make sacrifice for the progress of this state, take glory, God our Father, and return your blessings upon us. We make our prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you very much, Very Reverend Father Dr. Donatus Udoite, Vicar General of the Catholic Diocese of Uyo, a member of the planning committee for this summit, for that brief opening prayer. Your Excellency, the Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Mr. Udom Emmanuel, Your Excellency, the Deputy Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Mr. Moses Ekpo MFR, Speaker of the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly, represented here by the Chairman House Committee on Education, and member representing Ikodabasi State constituency in the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly, Right Honorable Udwak Odudo, Your Excellency, former military governor of Akwa Ibom State, Director General of the Divine Mandate, Air Commodore retired, Twekong Idonson Kanga, Your Excellency, former governor of Akwa Ibom State, Architect Obong Victor Atta. We welcome the chairman of the PDP, Akwa Ibom State, and the chairman of all state chairmen of the PDP in this country, Obong Paul Ekpo. Members of the National Assembly here present. I can see the member representing Ikorekwana Federal Constituency in the Federal House of Representatives, the Right Honorable Nsikak Ekong here with us. Members of the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly who are here in good number, we welcome you. Secretary to the Akwa Ibom State Government and Chairman of the Planning Committee for this summit, the Head of the Civil Service of Akwa Ibom State. We recognize the Vice Chairman of ExxonMobil companies in Nigeria and also the Coordinator of Akwa Ibom Professionals in the Diaspora, Mr. Udom Inoyo, who is here with us. Another management staff of ExxonMobil who had earlier been individually acknowledged. Commissioners, special advisors, especially Commissioner for Education, Akwa Ibom State Professor Nse Udoy Sen, Chairman of boards, commissions, and technical committees and their members who are here present, permanent secretaries and heads of extra ministerial departments, welcome you. Chairman of local government areas, the Chairman of Algon, Frank Achibong, leading his colleagues from the 31 local government areas to be here at this very important event. Chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria, the Reverend Dr. Ndoise Kwere, and all other clergymen that are here for this event. Welcome the paramount rulers and our real fathers who have come out to grace this event. Heads of sociocultural organizations that are here. From where I am, I can see the international president of Bogong Paraguay Bibio and the President General of Oral Union, both of them sitting together. Welcome you. And by extension, all other representatives of sociocultural organizations that are here. Representatives of corporate organizations that have identified with this event. Welcome resource persons, panelists, and discussants at this education summit. Welcome all the stakeholders in the education sector, the teachers under the auspices of the Nigeria Union of Teachers. Welcome, of course, the All Nigeria Conference of Principals of Secondary Schools and COPS. Welcome the National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools. Welcome also representatives of proprietors of mission schools, schools run by not-for-profit organizations. The Academic Staff Union of Universities, represented at this event, welcome you. Welcome promoters of education, stakeholders, non-governmental organizations who have one role or the other to play in the education sector in this state. Specially invited guests, gentlemen of the press, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We're seated here at the Mbogo Mparawai Bibio Hall here in Akwa Ibom State for the opening ceremony of a two-day event, an event which the government of Akwa Ibom State considers very critical, even as we continue the task of developing human capital for generations that are to come even after us, beginning even from this generation. The very first ever Akwa Ibom State Education Summits and Exhibitions with the theme, Human Capacity Development for Sustainable Transformation of Persons and Society. We welcome every single person who has accepted this invitation to be here. And from, of course, the list of people I had mentioned at the beginning, indicating those who are here, we would, of course, know that we have a wide variety of different interests and organizations, stakeholders in the educational sector in this state who are represented at this event. And the reason is very simple. All of us are able to come into this room because at some point or the other, we have had the privilege of sitting under the tutelage of a teacher. An education either of the formal or informal category has been imparted on us in such a way that we have been able to make positive impact in whatever fields of endeavor that we've found ourselves. Of course, the government realizes that the development of the education sector is a work in progress. And we cannot say that we really have arrived at El Dorado, which is why this summit is important for us to share ideas, brainstorm, and basically make suggestions and proffer solutions to some of the problems that are bedeviling the education sector in this state, with the aim of developing it and by extension also improving the human capital of the people of Akwa Ibom State so that they can be better competitive in the world that we currently live in. We thank every single member of the planning committee who has made efforts to ensure that the work of this committee is successful and we are able to have these opening ceremony. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to set the tone for this summit, let me invite a gentleman who himself, before getting into public service, has had some time in the academic community, the Secretary to the Akwa Ibom State Government and the Chairman of the Central Planning Committee for this Education Summit, Dr. Emmanuel Ekuwem, who will come forward here and set the tone for this interaction. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for him. Thank you.
Your Excellency, the Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Goodwill Emmanuel, Your Excellencies, the Deputy Governor, the former governors that are here present, distinguished senators that are here present, members of the National Assembly, members of Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly, those in the education sector, my friends, my brothers, my sisters, and gentlemen of the press. Today we are gathered to look at our education sector. And we are gratified to have a governor, Goodwill Emmanuel, who is a top, not only a top-down person, but a bottom-up technocrat. And like they did in ancient Israel, let's gather in the tent or in Atayara and look at the things that affects us and look at the things that impact on our lives and see what we can do and what we should do to better the socioeconomic lots of our people. I would like to put it this way, my friends, my brothers and sisters. In the beginning, we are told the good Lord created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was void and without form. And from then to the sixth day when he created man, and man in his own image. And God said to man, go and multiply and subdue the earth. How can you subdue what you do not understand? How can you subdue what you cannot fathom? How can you subdue what you have no intrinsic knowledge of what constitutes the threats posed by what you ought to subdue? So my friends, throughout the history of mankind, all the generations of mankind, from the Stone Age through Bone Age, to Iron Age, to Industrial Revolution via Steam Age, to the Space Age, to Computer Age, to Information Society of today, the transitions from each of those stages to the other has been as a result of passionate quest by mankind for knowledge and the use of knowledge applied same to improve upon the quality of the socioeconomic lot of mankind. That has been the essence, quantum, and quality of knowledge in each of those transitions or each of those stages. My friends and my brothers, it had then become the lot of man to establish educational institutions in order to institutionalize the process of knowledge acquisition, knowledge creation, and knowledge transmission, as well as the application of SEM. That's how the educational institution came into being. From birth, the first teachers are the parents. Through nursery, kindergarten, primary school, secondary schools, to universities, that is the essence of the institution of education. And I can tell you, show me your classroom, and I will tell you what you are. Show me your classroom and what happens in your classroom, and I will tell your country, your state, what you can do and what you cannot do. So the essence of this summit, as envisioned by His Excellency the Governor, is to look at the things that we must do as the people within the classrooms to better the lots of our people in our state. From parenting, the first teachers are parents, then the teachers themselves in institutions, They are the ones who teach. So the curriculum, the syllabus, character, core values, entrepreneurship, what you can do after school, like my boss would say, you find young men and women at 2 p.m. in their 20s and 30s. And that age bracket is productive, is imaginative, is impatient, is innovative, is imaginative. And you have them at them in events, 2 p.m. of the day, on a working day, not on a Saturday, not on a Sunday. Something is fundamentally not correct. And we're gathered here today, my friends, my brothers and my sisters, to look at what we can do. You talk, you listen, you make recommendations, and you also prefer how. You also prefer how, not just pious recommendations. When you recommend, and we welcome that, you also state actionable programs that would lead to the implementation of your should. My friends, my brothers, we are here for how and why and how we should. So we should, and at the same time, we also how. Thank you, and God bless.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's still the early hours of the morning. I'm sure we could give a better round of applause. Please put your hands together for Dr. Emmanuel Akwem. Thank you very much, and of course we want to acknowledge and thank all of the people who are watching the live broadcast of this event on the television services of Africa Independent Television, and also the live stream on the official social media channels of the government of Akwa Ibom State. Thank you very much. To welcome us to this event, briefly, Professor of Geology, Honorable Commissioner in charge of the Ministry of Education at Akwa Ibom State. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Nse Udoisien. Please put your hands together for the Commissioner as he comes up here for that purpose. Thank you.
His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Mr. Udom Emmanuel. His Excellency, the Deputy Governor, Mr. Moses Ebo. The former Executive Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Obong Victor Ta. The former Military Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Obong Idosin Kara. Please, I plead to stand on existing protocol. It is a great honor and privilege to welcome you all to this epoch-making event, the Economic Summit in Akwa Ibom State. May I specifically and most respectfully welcome our number one citizen, a visionary leader, His Excellency, Mr. Udom Emmanuel, who has embarked on a mission to build a prosperous future for Akwa Ibom State. I wholeheartedly welcome everybody from far and near who have come to take part in our Education Summit. We all gather here today from different backgrounds to focus our attention on one single agenda. And that agenda is building human capital development for Akwa Ibom State. The theme of this summit is tagged Human Capital Development for Sustainable Transformation of Persons and the Society. This theme underscores the point that the man and his society can only be transformed through human capacity development. In the same vein, human capacity development can only be realized through education and education alone. As a people in Akwa Ibom State, we have our visions and aspirations. Our vision is to build excellent infrastructure across the states, to provide high-quality healthcare services, to produce enough food to feed our population, and to jumpstart our industrial revolution. Our aspiration is to be an aviation hub in the West African sub-region, and to build and to construct a deep sea port in the Gulf of Guinea, and to build a robust economy where unemployment will be a thing of the past. Our visions cannot be achieved without the proper alignment of our education system. We cannot wait to design a strategic education master plan to address our short, medium, and long-term human capital deficits in our dear states. We must, without further delay, aggressively embark on mass production of first-class scientists, top-rated engineers, top-notch medical personnel, administrators, accountants, and indeed professionals in all human endeavors. Our efforts in the education sector must be in tandem with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, SDG 4, to totally eradicate all forms of illiteracy in our dear state by 2030. We cannot achieve all these lofty visions in our states when our education system is still in limbo. The scenario of our educational system is characterized by extensive infrastructural decay in our schools, total absence of library facilities, non-commitment of our teachers and trainers. Our science labs, technical workshops, and vocational centers have virtually become museums. Basic amenities that create a true learning environment, such as dormitories, dining halls, recreational facilities, are luxuries. Our curriculum does not train students for the markets, for the labor markets. Despite all these gloomy scenarios, there is hope for our education system. Since assumption of office, His Excellency, Mr. Udom Emmanuel has taken practical steps to turn around the fortunes of education in the state. We are implementing free and compulsory education. We pay WAEC and NAPTIP examination fee for all students in the Akwa Ibom State, among other interventions by government. Our infatigable and result-oriented executive governor has resolved to go further, to confront and arrest the rots and reverse the train of decay of our educational system. That is why we are gathering today on the platform of the Educational Summit. This summit promises to be a landmark gathering where resolution reached will lay a solid foundation for a new Akwa Ibom State, where our school system will indeed be the nursery and factory for the production of our critical human capacity for the sustainable development of our dear state for the 21st century. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to Akwa Ibom State Economic Summit. Thank you.
Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, of course, education is one of the cardinal drivers of economic development. So when the commissioner uses the word economic, I'm sure, of course, we know that he's referring to this education summit. Can we please put our hands together for him one more time? Thank you very much. I do not know if I'm the only one who has observed it, but we are not very enthusiastic with the applause. Can we give a better round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you. Your Excellency, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this education summit, like we know, is human capacity development for sustainable transformation of persons and society. And we've come to the point where we are going to listen to the keynote speech at this event. And this keynote speech will be presented by a gentleman who, of course, was well chosen for this task. A gentleman with a PhD in sociology, the former chairman of the Academic Staff Union of Universities in the University of Uyo. And I think currently he's still the coordinator of ASU in some parts of this country. Dean of Student Affairs in the department, or Dean of Student Affairs in the University of Uyo, and keynote speaker at this summit. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, may I please request that we give a good round of applause as I invite for his keynote speech, Dr. Anyekan S. Brown, Dean Student Affairs, University of Uyo. Please put your hands together for him, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency and Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, you'll permit me to especially acknowledge the presence of Nigerian students and pupils who are here. Put your hands together for them. Thank you. Your Excellency, let me note with appreciation to you, members of your team, members of the planning committee, by extension, everyone who is here who thought it wise to consider me worthy of standing here to give a keynote address. As I say thank you to you, I must very specifically say thank you to my teachers, those who are chieftains in education. Many of them are professors and they are here and they have ceded the onerous responsibility of presenting a keynote address even when they are chieftains. This responsibility has been given to a crime scientist, a sociologist, a public analyst, one who is given to labor movement, and one who is committed to a better future for ourselves. And so I thank you, my teachers. But as a matter of introduction, I'd like to say that it was Benjamin Franklin who noted that by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. It's also in place that Lecain stated that failing to plan is planning to fail. And Winston Churchill presented his in a way that says, he who fails to plan is planning to fail. Without doubt, these are great statesmen in history, and they have emphasized the need to plan. And for the Akwa Ibom state government to consider it needful to brainstorm over the future of this state, ladies and gentlemen, without any fear or favor, I stand on a strong pedestal to declare that Akwa Ibom shall not fail. What's the mission of what I'm trying to do? It is to lead in the process of evolving a new approach to functional education and capacity building that will meet the expectations of the present times without jeopardizing those of the future. As we want to discuss human capacity, it is needful to state that human capacity is different from human capital development. Human development is a case where someone just suddenly gets enough funds to be strong with himself, but he lacks the capacity to regenerate such capacity for others. And so as we discuss capacity, we must note that it's in the context of development. And 3 international scholars have come away with the idea of development. 1, Dudley Sears, 2, Michael Todaro, and our own dear Claude Ake, bless his soul. All 3 men discuss development in the context of people using their life circumstances to reach higher levels of civilization. The life circumstances of Akwa Ibom State today requires that it take a bold step to reach higher levels of civilization. But how do we get about this transformation? We must note from the point of view of the plant, the tree, that transformation on a sustainable note is that kind of activity that meets the standard of human capacity development. And before it does so, it must bring about transformation that is generated and sustained from time. Sustained over time from within. Therefore, it's not about importing it. It must be generated from within. And as we've gathered excess of 2,500, those chieftains in the education sector coming in, we are on the verge of generating something. But this tree that we are seeing was just a seed before now. Over time developed roots, interacted with fertile ground, started growing. The sustainability value of this tree is that it will reproduce itself over time if well nurtured. But failure to nurture it well suggests it will also die. I could be by fruits, and I trust that these attempts shall bear fruits. But in the context of this hope comes a critical question: what happens to our statistics? In sub-Saharan Africa, statistics are usually very political. Your Excellency, you note that when it's about those who top the chart in HIV/AIDS, they'll mention some states. When it's about those who top the chart in unemployment, they'll mention some states. But I bet you, if federal government decides that those states who top the chart in HIV/AIDS prevalence and unemployment would have extra money, those states who are topping the chart will no longer top the chart. That explains why I say our statistics are usually political. And so let's not be swayed by the political statistics, but let's be given to correct and objective statistics. These are the bases that we need to galvanize into the next level. What is capacity development? We must think of providing the right answers to questions that border on: to what end do we need to develop this capacity? What will be its purpose? Whose capacities need to be developed? In other words, which groups or individuals need to be empowered? What kinds of capacities need to develop to achieve the broader development objectives? Relying on what the UNDP has offered, you see a diagram. It comes with the process. Central in that diagram is capacity development process. But the first stage is the engagement of stakeholders. And Your Excellency, sir, this is a right first step taken. But as we engage stakeholders, we must assess the capacity assets and needs. What assets do we have? What needs are befalling us, are confronting us? And then as we do so correctly, we get to the next level that we begin to formulate capacity development programs. Please note that we are not talking about projects, capacity development projects. Those ones could just be deposited. But we must have a program approach where everyone concerned is involved. And when everyone concerned is involved, ownership will be collective. The next step will be the implementation of such development capacity response. How do we respond to this? Having regards to what we've had. And finally, we'll have need to evaluate the development we've been able to record. Your Excellency, as we state, engagement of stakeholders is what we are doing. We begin to assess the capacity by identifying existing capacity assets, and we go ahead to identify the needs. We assess the capacity because we must develop a comprehensive view of the issues that could be addressed. If it is not comprehensive, we'll succeed in some, then some areas will draw us back, and the dream risk being dashed. The state of formulating capacity development is that a good capacity development response builds on existing capacity assets to address the gaps identified in the capacity assessment. To implement a capacity development response, this points to where all the thinking, the planning, assessing, analyzing, and designing is tested in the real world. So I'd like to charge us as we sit here in this summit to brainstorm over negotiating a new way forward. We must test it to the real world. Therefore, beyond this theory and coming away, I'd like to take the concluding minutes of my presentation to inch a little into the real world. Because when we theorize on paper without making it real on the real world, then we would have ended up just being known to have spoken, but not doing what we said. The evaluation and development and evaluation of the capacity development is that there must be measurement of capacity development success. Now, measurement cannot be successful if we merely reduce to an increase in input resources such as human, financial, or physical resources. But it's got to be very comprehensive. We said that before. And you'll see a very complex diagram that talks about the framework for measuring capacity development. Let us not dwell too much here, but the diagram here speaks of something that grows from the within, from the base. And I trust that since this is the summit, I'm thinking that there had been some developments at the village, the community, the ward, the local government, the senatorial district areas before reaching this summit. And as the Honorable Commissioner stated, as per the vision of our state, by the time the state arrives at this, it will be of positive impact to our country, Nigeria. Now note that it begins with dealing with the institutions. How do we arrange our institutions? What is the leadership like? In this case, leadership shouldn't be seen as a position, but it should be seen as a process. Therefore, everyone has capacity to be a leader. That leadership at home, leadership in the group of friends you keep, leadership in the classroom, leadership in the marketplace, leadership in church, leadership everywhere, till it evolves to a point of leading a state. So we should not just focus on the governor. If we don't focus on the governor alone, then we will take responsibility of what happens to the state. And so there must be knowledge, there must be accountability. And when we do this, we adapt to the real situation we found ourselves, we become stable over time, and then the performance will lead us to this expected capacity. We must also note that it must be driven beyond arts. You know, arts is a case of creativity, but you must manage creativity well and domicile it in the context of analysis, objective analysis. And therefore, we must graduate from mere artistry to science. I said, when it comes to applying the fundamental principles, not only does one size not fit all, but no two situations are identical. The distortions inherent in development processes, be they economic, social, political, or environmental, affect each stage of the cycle in unique and often unpredictable ways. Therefore, let it not be because it survived in America, it succeeded in the United States, we just bring it here and attempt it here. No. We must include the aspect of science where we analyze properly and then we align it in the context of our life circumstances and chances. In this context, we'll be able to find the right foot. Now note that a few things work. Development is about innovation. When people are empowered to bring good ideas to fruition, everybody wins. But please note that empowerment in this case is not when perhaps somebody from the Islamic Ummah, the issue of Boko Haram, because of failure of educational aspect of some institution, they begin to think that Western education is evil, and then people empower them with finances, with ammunition, arms and ammunition to cause mayhem. That is not the empowerment we are talking about. Or let's come home. Are we talking about somebody who quasi-employs himself as a PA to a local government chairman? Every morning he takes his bath, dresses well, hangs at the gate of a chairman, moves with him, the man returns, drops a little pay, and is enough for the day. That is not empowerment. But the empowerment in this case is the one that is informed by capacity to dig deep, to add value to the essence of life, to add value to the society. If I have that capacity today, and it's inherent in me, that capacity will be with me tomorrow, so that it will not end when that local government chairman ceases to be chairman. When development strategies focus on clearing pathways to innovation, they create favorable tailwinds that allow ideas to take flight. Another thing that works could be seen in the example of Albania brain gain experience. You see, you will always hear the Union ASU talk about brain drain. But rather than drain the brains, sometimes they're internal. Our best brains may go into politics. Our best brains may go into the oil sector, may begin to travel abroad, and the rest of them. But it's possible that rather than draining our brains, we begin to gain them more. And the Albanian example is worth studying. That a growing number of brain gain initiatives around the world are managing to attract back talents. You notice that as the talent goes, people, rather than look elsewhere, begin to look inwards, begin to think of what to do to change the situation within. And as they successfully change the situation within, it becomes more interesting for these persons to develop their society and for members of the society to feel a part of them. There are various experiences, but let's take it easy there. And I take a few minutes to tell you my own story. And I titled that, From Cradle, a Message of Hope. From Cradle, a Message of Hope. Here is Anyekan Brown standing before you. Your Excellency, sorry to come public. 50 years ago today, I believe my mother was in serious pains to give birth to this guy tomorrow. I was born on the 6th of September, 1969. And as we speak, I grew as my mates grew. But I was lucky to grow in a family of teachers. My parents were teachers, very well disciplined. And so your yes was to be yes. Failure to make your yes no, of course, will take a swipe from my father. Dad could flog you once, but I tell you, Mom would not leave it. For weeks, Mom will still be reminding you of that. And therefore, once upon a time, a baby grew in the context of discipline, and by the grace of God is writing his name in gold today. What do we mean? Yes. What do we mean? As the Secretary to Government of the State stated, parents are number one teachers. We cannot reach this level we are expecting without education. But note that education is not just about formal education. You have informal education, and it begins with the parents. If the parents, by virtue of the realities of industrial revolution, begin to leave homes in the mornings and return at night, and the children don't know them, they hand over the breeding of their children to house helps whose backgrounds do not blend with the philosophy of the family. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, you can agree with me that such children can hardly be good ones for the society. And so a time comes that parents must begin to take responsibility for their children. A time comes that siblings, elder siblings in the family, should begin to take responsibility of grooming the younger ones. And as we go to school, the questions will begin to come. What are the issues in school? Who are the teachers in school? Who are the caregivers in school? How prepared are they? How motivated are they? How many of them pay the number of children they want to take care of? What about the administration of the same school? The management of that school? The environment in school? What happens between the home and the school? What happens when parents are not yet back from work? What happens when they are sleeping? What happens on their way to church? This is one thing that all of us must collectively attend to. Aneka Brown in 2007 saw education as that key to unlocking the locked dreams, aspirations, and thoughts in human beings. But you know what? If the education cannot provide that key, then it means we've wasted our time. Note that time there was that the need of our society was grammar. Little wonder it was a common thing to have grammar schools. But over time, Nigerians conquered grammar. The challenge became technical. The challenge became vocational. The challenge became commercial. We just found ourselves establishing vocational schools, commercial schools, and the rest of them. But the world has long left that level. The world is now at the level of information. And from what Nolan and the rest of them are doing, it gives me the impression very soon the information age will give way to the era of connectivity. That leads us to the question, what are people taught in schools? What we teach them, the curriculum in school, to what extent could this curriculum give answers to the questions that we have herein? Your Excellency, sir, the problem we have today is that we have left the issue of education and come to prefer the issue of certification. What is certification? The process of amassing several certificates and being certificated, not certified. There is a difference. Excellency, there is a difference between being certificated and being certified. To be certified means you've been tested and you've been trusted. And so, having graduated from that school, you are well able and prepared enough to face any challenge that will come your way. But let us feel challenged inwards that much of what we've turned out as graduates and graduates are very far from meeting the needs of the present time. Therefore, the challenge is to go back to education, not certification. And back to the basics. What does it take to evolve this much-needed functional education that would enhance human capacity building for sustainable transformation of persons and society? And I say back to the basics. I'd ask the following questions. What is happening to parenting and initial orientations? Who is the teacher and how is he or she teaching? What is the content of the curriculum? Who is managing the schools and how are the schools managed? How responsive is the school system to the aspirations and needs of our present society? Furthermore, what is the teacher-student ratio? What is the welfare status of the teacher in the context of positive reinforcement? What are the PTA, what roles are the PTAs playing today? Your Excellency, I'm aware of a certain PTA who, when they heard that government has given a little subvention to a school, their interest is to corner the principal to discuss how to share that money. And so in this conference, in this summit, we must critically ask the question, what roles are the PTAs playing? What roles are the host communities playing in the context of the structure of those host communities, the systems and the relationships? I would expect a village head to call to question any headmaster or principal who mismanages a school in his village, securing the knowledge that such mismanagement would take a negative toll on the students and by extension the society. I want to believe it is possible for our royal fathers to report such persons to the appropriate authorities. Let me also ask, when I was growing up, there used to be, I speak my language, Asewfongwet, those who inspected schools. What is happening to that provision today? Anytime we heard that the Asewfongwet was approaching, you would see the students, the staff, and everyone within the school community come together to make sure that the shape of the school was in place. But today, I will want to advocate that we go back to that time. The next point. Yes. What roles are corporate entities playing? Yes. Akwa Ibom is blessed with oil. And by extension, the population is rich too. It's a rich, large population. And so urbanization is growing. You notice banks are coming. Industries and institutions are coming to make gains from the state. But there is something known as corporate social responsibility. This summit should ask the questions. What are those making gains, the corporate entities making gains from Akwa Ibom State? What are they applying back to the educational sector? I have another question. Can other complementary institutions like the church, the mass media, etc., do better than it is doing today? The church is an instrument for socialization and education. The question is, it is sad that Nigeria has put paid to this course known as, it had to do with moral instruction. Today, moral instruction is out of the curriculum. The question is, if it is out as such, the complement should come from other areas. But I stand here to advocate that we must bring moral instructions back. Your Excellency, because this is a platform, I like to note that over the years, I'd always appreciated the former national anthem. And I'm glad that His Excellency Obonwota was a co-chairman to the most critical committee of the last national conference. One of the submissions of that national conference was that we'd revert to the other national anthem. If you ask me, that anthem was full of morality. Verse 1 was, Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians all and proud to serve our sovereign motherland. It acknowledged there would be differences in tribes and tongue, but there was a commitment to remain brothers. Verse 2 was a challenge to attitude to work and nationhood. It said, our flag shall be a symbol that truth and justice reigns. In peace or battle, honor, and these we count as gain. To hand unto our children a banner without stain. What does that tell me? It tells me that as I occupy an office today, I should leave that office better than I came to see it. And when my successor wants to leave, he should leave it better. But something tells me people were committed not to leave the office better. I'm sorry to say this, sir, but I would want us to go back to that anthem. So that as I take an oath of office, I feel the charge that I must leave this place better. The final verse was a wonderful prayer. O God of all creation, grant this I want request. It wasn't many, one. Help us to build a nation where no man is oppressed. And when we do so, it says, and so with peace and plenty, Nigeria may be blessed. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, my take there is this. If we go back to that national anthem, morality shall come back to our lips. And as constantly we sing it in our lips, it will transcend. Because every society is identified with taste, sights, and sounds. And these things make us who we are. I didn't come to criticize the former national anthem, I mean the current one, but I came to really promote the former. And I believe if we go back, we'll get there. I had made mention of my story. Humble beginning, through the thick and thin. My parents were teachers. I had nomadic primary education because I attended 5. I went to the Lutheran High School, only that one. And I salute the fact that Obon Clement is sung, and Christopher Udome said, they established the then University of Cross River State. I got there. And then here am I, being able to stand before people. And I encourage the students there that as we rise from this summit, as we begin to answer sincerely to the critical posers that I forwarded, I trust that students who are here now, in some time to come, will stand out like me and prove to be responsible people. As I begin to conclude, Your Excellency, the way forward is that answers to the above posers will certainly evolve the much needed new direction. And note that it is a complex situation, but no matter how complex, we will unbundle the conundrum and move forward. The next one is that we are aiming at a higher level of civilization in the context of human capacity development. I insist that answers to the above posers will certainly evolve the much needed new direction for sustainable transformation. The third one, as I conclude, is that answers to the above posers will certainly evolve the much needed new direction as led by a visionary. Ladies and gentlemen, in our social anthropology, Obong is Ibong. Are we together? The king does not just shout by himself. The loudness of the voice of the king is incumbent on those who follow him. Yes, the governor has proved to be a visionary. He alone cannot do it. It calls for all and sundry. The family, the communities, the local government, those stakeholders, all and sundry, including you and I. Ladies and gentlemen, chance favors the prepared mind. May we leave this summit better prepared for the change ahead that we came. Thank you for holding me out.
Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, if you believe that that was a choice well made and a topic well delivered, please put your hands together for Dr. Onyeka S. Brown, the Dean of Student Affairs of the University of Uyo. Thank you very much. Beyond, of course, getting carried away by the dexterity in which he made the presentation, we're hoping that the points that he raised, the posers that he raised, are not lost on us, and they will form good food for thought for all of us who are here, even as we continue in this march of ensuring that we improve our society, beginning with the massive development of our educational sector. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for that gentleman. Thank you very, very much. Well, I'm sure he did not intend it, but he has also told us that tomorrow he'll be turning 50 years of age. So we wish you an early happy birthday, Dr. Brown. Thank you. Your Excellency, the Governor, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we're continuing this brainstorming session, this session of looking at how we can collectively improve the contributions that we're making to our educational sector and ensuring that we leave, even for the generation after us, a much better society than the one that we currently live in. And I will invite to kindly come forward and make a brief presentation, even as we continue this interaction, a gentleman who I'm very sure will be charging all of us here as to the roles that we should play. From the National Institute of Transformation in Lagos. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a brief message of goodwill from Professor Vincent Anibogu. Please put your hands together for him as he comes up here for his presentation, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I think we can give a better round of applause. Please put your hands together for him.
Your Excellency, the Executive Governor of Akwa Ibom State, and I'm not going too far when I say Nigerians or one of the Nigerians' best governors. I think you should clap. Your Excellency, the Deputy Governor, Your Excellencies, the former governors in the past, the SSG, the Honorable Commissioner for Education, I asked to stand on existing protocol. Thank you for this privilege to be here. I love Akwa Ibom State, and every time I come here, there's an energy that I feel that God is about to do something in this state. I'll just add a few comments on what the keynote speaker has said. And sir, thank you so much for that exposition. And as he said, one of my prayers is that whatever is said here in the next 2 days will not just be a theory, but it will be converted. It will be converted. Human capital has been defined as the stock of competencies embodied in the ability to perform labor so as to produce goods and services of economic value. So a true measure that capacities are being developed is when the economic productivity of the state increases, not when our ability to speak grammar increases. And the Nigerian education has emphasized speaking grammar, not productivity. I move around this nation and this continent from universities, and everywhere I go, I meet people who can speak eloquently but cannot produce. That mindset must change. If I have my way, I will order all professors to wear short knicker and go to the farm and teach. That's radical, isn't it? What is human capital management? 3 things. The capacity to develop talents. 1, the capacity to deploy talents. And when you cannot produce enough, the capacity to draw from elsewhere. Singapore developed not only by developing their own indigenous capacity, but they searched worldwide to find the best talents. And they succeeded in developing a nation from third world to first. So my prayer for Akwa Ibom State is that not only must you develop the talents and deploy them and create an enabling environment for them, but you will also engage in a worldwide search for some of your best talents. And I know some of them. Somebody like Professor Hilary Inyang should be here. Professor Inyang is my best friend. He's globally known. You have sons and daughters out there that can help build this state. There's a clear study that correlates human capital development with economic growth. They connect. If you don't develop your people, they will not be useful to you. In fact, they'll be problematical. Therefore, investing in human capital development is a must. I really believe that Akwa Ibom State has an opportunity to become a hub in West Africa. It can happen. It has happened before. But for that to happen, there must be a deliberate investment in human capital. Let me just give you some numbers. Last night I was looking at the human capital development indices, and the human capital indices by United Nations measured many things, but the 3 critical ones are life expectancy, education index, and income index. Currently, Nigeria ranks 157 out of 187. Nations like Cameroon, DRC, Zimbabwe are ranking better than Nigeria. And yet we drive some of the finest car in Nigeria. We invest money in perishables, but not in people. We buy some of the most expensive things, and our youths are languishing. It's time to get our priorities right. 157 in the world. Lee Kuan Yew said, and listen carefully, governance is an entrepreneurship on a political platform on a national scale. The government of Singapore never saw government as a place where you go to eat. It's a place where you go to produce. And any government agency that did not produce is closed down. And today, the per capita income in Singapore is over $100,000. No natural resources, nothing. Because they realize that the best resource is the people. It's not the oil. It's not the mineral. Those are extras. Lee Kuan Yew said, with no natural resources and everything, how can we develop? He said it means that we have to train our people and equip them to provide first world standard of service. Human capital must be based on vision. It's not just an empty exercise, it is the vision that drives it. And you must set the vision to develop a first world state, and it can be done. A state that can provide first world quality of service. Akwa Ibom State, can you do that? Are you committing to it? You are really committing to it? Then that will drive capacity development, because a standard has been set. Singapore has now the #1 education system. Not because they wanted to have #1 education system. No, they set a goal to be the best, and to be the best, they have to have the best education system. It goes without saying. It's vision that drives education. You can't pursue human capital in a vacuum. And there must be a passionate desire to do it. Akwa Ibom State, I know the passion of your leaders. I know it. But do you have that passion? The last comment I want to make is about the current education system. As you already know, the Nigerian education system heavily relies on theory rather than knowledge application. It lacks skilled teachers who have the required knowledge needed to deliver quality knowledge and skill transfer to the students. And of course, it deploys outdated curriculum. Study has shown that when children are in elementary school, they still have their innovative and creative ability. By the time they finish secondary school, that ability has dropped to 30%. By the time they finish university, their innovative skills has come down to 12%. The education system has destroyed on average 88% of their creative and innovative ability. because he forces them to memorize. He doesn't teach them to use application, to use knowledge. What is the verdict? Our current education system is killing our children. They're not building our children. What is the way forward? Professor Edward Deming, a management consultant, once said, any variation that you see in a system is primarily caused by the system itself and not necessarily the people. In other words, when there's a variation in performance, don't blame the people, look at the system. Let me summarize it. An old system will produce an old result. A new system will produce what? So if you want a new result, do you continue with the old system? You must implement a new system. Tell your neighbor, we must change our education if we want a new result. So it's not a question of whether we should. We desire a new outcome. Therefore, a new system must be what? Implemented. What kind of students must we develop? For Africa to survive this season, I wish God can open your eyes to know the enormity. Thank you. The enormity of challenges that's facing Africa. China is already on the way. Other people are interested in our resources. If we're going to weather the storm, we must develop students who see the future and deal with the present from the future perspective. We need what I call imaginer leaders. Leaders that see trends, not leaders that just try to survive today and are swallowed up by future events and future trends. We must develop students who are imaginative and creative and that can create the future. As I close, Your Excellency, you know our desire of the Institute for National Transformation to partner with the states to create imaginary leaders. We are interested in helping to create the kind of leaders that will see the future of this state and help make it to happen. And for that to happen, we need to change how we do things. Professor Deming said, if you cannot describe what you are doing as a process, you don't know what you are doing. It's good to talk about the new education process, but if you can't break it down and you know precisely what the curriculum should look like, how assessment should be conducted, if it ends up just as an emotional discussion, Professor Deming said, you don't know what you're talking about. That's my prayer, is that when this meeting is over, a technical team can be formed that will actually sit down and say, what should the curriculum look like? How should it be monitored? Who will teach it? Finally, Your Excellency, sir, and distinguished guests, Akwa Ibom State has come a long way. Your hard-earned accomplishments in state building has been achieved under very challenging circumstances. I remembered 2 years ago when we had a retreat with the ESCO, the former SSG was watching a movie that we showed them, and then he started crying. He was crying profusely. So I went to him and said, sir, why are you crying? What is this movie stimulating in you? He said, Prof, I can see Akwa Ibom State in that young man. The struggling of that young man captures the struggling of this state when we were first created. But look at you today. You're becoming a model. You're becoming the example. Akwa Ibom State, you have a chance to be the hub, the economic hub, the commercial hub in West Africa. It can happen. And if you see it and ask God for it, He will do it for you. Congratulations.
Can we please give Prof another round of applause? Your Excellency, the summit takes another turn as we invite our first lecturer for the day. But before I do so, Your Excellency, let me quickly just remind us that right on the heels of the first lecture, we'll have Goodwill messages. The first lecture is entitled Creating a New Akwa Ibom State, Ethical, Attitudinal Reorientation, and Change of Mindsets. To handle that, the Reverend Ntia, founder and senior pastor, Full Life Christian Center, Uyo, Akwa Ibom State. Can we please put our hands together as I invite him to this microphone?
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, all our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all other protocols duly observed. I want to appreciate our governor and the whole state for this privilege given to me to address us. Secondly, I want to appreciate the effort being made towards developing the educational sector of our state. Thank you very much. I would like to, first of all, caution that I'm not speaking as a lecturer. I'll be speaking as a pastor. When you invite a pastor to speak, don't expect him to be different. It is my intention to speak to our hearts, not our heads. There is no shortage of good people. There is only a shortage of resolved people. There is no shortage of skilled people. There is only a shortage of determined people. I dare say that there's no shortage of trained, capable people. And I'm not saying this to counter any presentation that was made before, that will be made after. But like I said, my assignment here is to stir the hearts of we the technocrats, the administrators, so that as we further deliberate on what to do for our school system, you will have in mind parents that don't know so much. You will have in mind, and I'm okay with this. Thank you. I think I would have preferred that. Can I use that? I prefer that. Yes. This will make me more of a pastor. I almost said, praise the Lord. Well, praise the Lord. Okay. So I said that there's no shortage of trained people. There's no shortage of competent people. In fact, there's no shortage of willing people. There's only a shortage of determined people. And by the time we bring out all the points and all the do's and all the suggestions, I just want to challenge you. Who will be willing to take the heat that will come to you when you insist on changing a system? Who will be willing to face the fight, the blackmail, the misrepresentation, the gang up, the conspiracy, the resistance, the denial of your rights? No system ever changes just because people wished there was a change. Systems changed because people risked everything necessary to fight in order to bring about a change. So I want to stir our hearts. Our educational system has had challenges for a long time. Our educational system has had a whole lot of issues to contend with. My focus was to include eradication of vices. And yes, our educational system has been plagued with vices. Everywhere you turn, we are confronted with them. Vices from incompetent personnel that were brought into offices and positions of responsibility. In fact, one of the greatest vices in the top 10 list of vices is substandard personnel entrusted with responsibilities for performance. It is one of the greatest vices. Before we have students that are exposed to cultism and that are exposed to moral decay and that are exposed to sexual immorality, we have had people that had the opportunity of molding the character, the minds, the beliefs of these students who failed. We also have a vice of substandard performance. We have the vice of a person, people who could have done better if only they had prepared better, but they did not. And because they didn't prepare well, those that depended on their preparation never got the best from them. And so I am saying, by the time we make up our minds that we need to confront these and several other vices, we must be ready for the fight that will come. What are vices? Vices refer to all forms of evil, wickedness, criminal actions, and behaviors that constitutes a problem to society. Vices refer to inappropriate behaviors and practices that society frowns at. Vices include criminal actions and behaviors, either by an individual or by a group. And in our educational system, we have such vices, as I highlighted earlier: incompetent performance from personnel, cultism. We have other vices like exam malpractice, drug abuse, sexual harassment, and sexual promiscuity. Let's look at cultism, for example. It is clear that we have cults in our schools because our schools is just an extension of society itself. We have cults, both organized and not or non-organized cults, responsible for the spread of violence, breakdown of law and order, damaging of people's lives and properties. Why do we have these cultism problems? Moral decadence, failure in family upbringing, and several others. Examination malpractice, another vice in our school systems. Either by omission or by commission, when standards are compromised, the result is malpractice. We all know that examinations are meant to be organized under very strict and rigid principles. But how many lecturers are ready to be unpopular among both your fellow lecturers and students because you are firm and you are rigid? How many lecturers can look at another lecturer in the face who tries to plead with you in order for you to compromise standards? Can you turn down a fellow colleague? How many lecturers can look at a parent in the face who tries to solicit or sort financially? How many lecturers? The problem is not the presence of these vices. The problem is who is willing to be unpopular, who is willing to face others and stand for what is right, no matter what it will cost you. It was mentioned earlier that we have an over-concentration of focus of attention on paper certification rather than qualification. It is part of the reason why there is exam malpractice. For example, admission processes into schools. How many people are excited and encourage and celebrate and promote the setting of exams by universities before people are admitted? A lot of people have spoken against it. But the truth is, as long as we keep admitting students based on just paper qualification, that is most times fake results, forged certificates, and there is no basis on which these students are demanded to perform on the spot to defend the papers they have, we will continue to have students that beat the system to gain admission, and it will be too late to force them to submit to the system and do well. We must go back to address our entrance processes. What will we say about inadequate facilities? As long as we have overcrowded exams halls and overcrowded classes, those that should teach will not be able to supervise classes well, and the students that should concentrate will not be able to concentrate. As long as we have overcrowded lecture halls and exam halls, giraffing will continue, and nobody will be able to supervise who carried a bullet or wrote answers in their hands. I know that the place will be kind of quiet right now, but I told you I'm here to speak as a pastor, not as a lecturer. How many will say here that they did not copy to enter an exam? In fact, once I was teaching in church, and I dared say that copying in an exam is a sin, and you needed to have seen the hands that went up. Some said things like, what if the person you are copying from agreed that you should copy? Some said things like, what if the supervisor or the invigilator permitted you to copy? Some said things like, what if the answers are written for you on the board Some said, what if the school has its record of excellent performances based on assisting students to copy? And the truth is, this is what is going on in our schools. So I want to challenge you. Be that invigilator that will stand from the beginning of an exam to the end, and you will not exit the exam hall and ask some other person to invigilate. Be that exam invigilator that will space out the chairs and make the students sit so far apart that they cannot copy or giraffe. Be that exam invigilator that will refuse to turn the other eye when you see a favorite student bringing out a thing he had written and is copying in the exam hall. Be that invigilator that will sign on the exam sheet and insist that the marks that are to be deducted are deducted. Those are the kind of exam classes and exam rooms that some of us grew up in. Friends, we did not cheat because it wasn't possible. We cheated because you couldn't cheat and go scot-free. We stopped cheating rather, or we refused to cheat because you couldn't cheat and have your way. I want to challenge us. Vices will go if those responsible for enforcing standards insist on enforcing standards without fear, without sentiments, or without favor. I never saw my father go see any lecturer. In fact, I personally never had the opportunity of meeting a lecturer to say, please show me my scores. I used to think, if what I wrote is what they'll give to me, what's the use seeing it before the result is pasted? In our time, results were pasted. You didn't need to meet a lecturer to say, please show me my performance. You just wait till it is pasted and the whole world will see your performance. So let us provide better facilities and let us insist that exams are properly supervised. And I think that the issue of exam malpractice will begin to diminish. Other solutions I would recommend to exam malpractice and other vices will include corrective discipline for those who are caught, insisting that punishments are enforced, discarding this "there is nothing we can do" attitude, and making sure that administrators of schools, lecturers, and teachers who encourage and facilitate exam malpractices are punished for all to see. If everybody that is involved in vices are punished irrespective of their status, their level, their position, it will go down. Another vice is sexual harassment and promiscuity. I want to say that sexual harassment or sexual promiscuity is a result of the moral decadence in our society. Family values have gone down, resulting in parents who are absent from the upbringing of their children, resulting in obscene dressing, resulting in wrong associations and friendships, resulting in peer pressure and influences, resulting in people who actually intimidate others and threaten them if they would not succumb to sexual pressure. It has also resulted in those who actually make themselves available, offering their bodies for sexual payment for whatever gains they want to get. Inasmuch as all these vices seem to be very prevalent, they are not, or rather, we are not in a hopeless situation. And so I would like to charge us, as I begin to round up, on the needs for changing our work ethics and attitude. If we confront ourselves with respect to our work ethics and our work attitudes, I'm telling you that there is a way forward. God can help us bring a turnaround in our educational system. What is the work attitude expected of us in order to bring about the change that we desire? What are the kind of things that we can put in place in order to bring about a reform in our educational system? First of all, I'd like to say that if we're going to address attitudinal change, we need to look at different levels of key aspects that affect education. Number one, school structure and facilities. Number two, teachers training and empowerment. Number three, student recruitment and management processes. Number four, we recommend learning environment and conditions. Number five, I would recommend review of our curriculum of studies. Next, I will recommend re-engineering school management and administration processes. And finally, I would like to recommend restoring teacher-student mentoral platforms. These are some of the elements that bring about qualitative education. Let's look at teachers and teaching methods. How many of our teachers are up to date in teaching methods? How many of our teachers go through training and retraining? How many of our teachers focus on their personality and how compatible their personality is with handling students? How many of our teachers are available in class as and when they should be? There was a time we used to have impromptu school visits where administrators will arrive at schools without warning and walk into actual classrooms to know whether teachers are at their duty post. We need to have many more of such visits. How many of our teachers are adequately motivated? Let's look at our educational curriculum content. Is our curriculum relevant to current life realities? One of the keynote speakers said we need to bring back moral education. That is some of the things that our curriculum must be made to include. Are there basic life career skills sufficiently emphasized in our curriculum? Does our curriculum cover areas of life management? For example, relationship management. When a student is facing peer pressure, is there anything in our curriculum to train him and teach him on how to resist peer pressure? Does our curriculum include society and history? How many of today's students are in touch with the history of this nation? When the keynote speaker was reciting the wordings of the first anthem, in my mind I was trying to run through, can I still remember the words of the first anthem? I am not too small, not too young. But then, today that we have students who are 18, 16, how many of them are in touch? Recently, we are confronted by the plague of xenophobia sweeping across the Southern Africa. And repeatedly, as I listened to different people speak, one of the things they kept saying is that today's generation have forgotten or are ignorant of the sacrifices that were made to bring them to where they are today. I think that that is part of what is lacking in educational curriculum. People are not in touch with the things that they need to know. Let's look at our learning environment. Is it healthy? Is it secure? Is it safe? Is it inspiring? Is our learning environment inclusive? Does it foster cooperation? Does it attract parents, society involvement? Let's look at school management. Is a school management well run? Is it well organized? Is there any way of knowing if a school is adhering to the administrative guidelines that ought to supervise at school? Is there financial honesty and transparency in how school funds are managed? Are there checks and balances based on which how school funds are utilized can be examined? Is there a healthy interaction among staffs and students? Let's look at the general life or living condition of both the students, the parents, families. I know we expect parents to have time to take care of children, and it's important they should. And we expect students to learn. But then what are these students exposed to? What does a child go through before arriving at a class? How many students are facing the challenges of conflicts, disasters, abuse, crime, child labor, disease? Does every child have equal access to social opportunities? Living condition affects learning. Let's talk about funding of education. Funding of education is a very, very, very serious area of need. A school that is not adequately funded cannot ensure quality. We need in our school systems checks and balances to make sure that whatever funding is made available today is properly channeled and properly utilized. Finally, I'd like to say, as we deliberate and as we brainstorm, please take into consideration some of these challenges that confronts us from our perspective as those who benefit from the educational sector. Such challenges like incorrectly formulated and implemented policies. For example, what should a state or a nation or a school go through before insisting on what subjects are compulsory for a student and which subjects are not compulsory? We need to make sure that our policies are not just arbitrarily changed. We need to look at affordability of education. Yes, we have schools. The schools that are affordable, are they quality schools? The quality schools we have, are they affordable? How can we make sure that there are some schools that remain affordable despite being qualitative? I also want to ask us to look at brain drain in the educational sector. And by that, what I mean is, how many first-class students are looking forward to a career in education? How many first-class students see teaching as a life career? Sadly, it seems as though people only see teaching and education as a last resort, meant to be pursued by those who had nowhere else to go. But that should not be the case. We still need to have a situation where our first-class students see pursuing teaching and education as a life career, a life calling. We have a situation where people leave teaching and go into other more economically viable career opportunities. And you ask yourself, where are the people that saw teaching as a pride, saw teaching as a dream? Where are the people that derive joy in seeing what students were to become, and not just taking decisions based on economic reasons? We need to go back to sensitizing society on the importance of education. Not every parent sees education as important. Some think that investing in education with minimal resources is a waste of resources. But we need to go back to sensitizing our populace, our families, including those of us in churches. Let us also please be interested in finding a solution to the problem of insufficient number of quality teachers. Somebody said earlier that we do not have quality teachers, and someone not too far from where I was sitting said we have quality teachers. I agree that we do have, but are they sufficient? When you look at the apathy towards teaching career, when you look at the disrespect that is meted to teachers, when you look at where a person is assessed just based on his economic status and not his impact, is the teaching profession being given the priority respect it deserves? How many people are going to go back to becoming excited about their teaching career? How many teachers are being given more subjects than they can handle? Where one teacher has to handle 5, 6 subjects. And I must say that we need to look into how schools are actually being run. If a school decides not to employ a certain number of teachers, who is going to make sure that the right number of teachers are employed? Because when a teacher has to handle more subjects than he or she can handle, definitely there will be depreciation in quality of preparation. Also, let us look at teacher-student ratio. How many students should be in a class a teacher should handle? Some of the courses I attended in university, some of us actually sat outside the class because of the number of students that one lecturer or teacher had to handle. We need to look into teacher-student ratios to make sure that a teacher handles just the number of students that he or she can adequately supervise. Also, we need to look at compromise in the hiring of teachers. Compromise in the hiring of teachers. How many people are in the teaching profession who have proper teaching qualifications? We need to make sure that only those who have competence are allowed into the teaching profession. What do we do about loss of quality teachers to other better paying career jobs? I want to say that if truly education is as important to society as we believe, then we have to find a way of making sure that teachers are so well paid that in time not long from now, teaching will be one of the best paying career jobs in our society. Also, I would like to appeal that we look at incessant disruption of school calendar years. So many things disrupt our school calendar in a year or a session, from crisis to disasters to policy change to political instability and to several other things. I'd like to also recommend or appeal that we look at how educational administrators are appointed. Yes, how educational administrators are appointed at all levels. I think that it is improper for a person to be appointed to administer education who has no education background. And so I would like to suggest that we should appoint only people with proper experience, training, and skill, so that we can have round pegs in round holes. I'd also like to please add that we should look at public-private sector partnership in promoting our education. Government cannot do everything, but government can reach out. Government can invite. Government can demand. Government can sponsor policies that will make it mandatory for the private sector to fund education as part of their corporate social responsibility. Lastly, I'd like to recommend that we look at how to support both the public schools and the private schools. I believe that just as the public schools help in societal training and development, the private schools do the same. And so, government and indeed everyone should see the public and the private schools as a place for necessary attentions. And in conclusion, I want to please appeal to all of us that are parents: become interested in your child's education. Pay a visit to your child's school. Pay a visit to the dean, to the head of department. Pay a visit to some of the lecturers of your students, of your child, that teach your child. Why? Because sometimes parents allow themselves to be deceived by children because the parents didn't go the extra mile of finding out what they need to know firsthand from the school. Please, these are my thoughts, and I believe that if we look into these areas with the resolve to face and fight the needed battle for bringing about a better educational system, progress might be slow, but definitely it is possible. Thank you very much.
Senior Pastor of the Full Life Christian Center, proprietor of the Full Life Foundation School, Pastor Ntia Aintia, speaking to us there. Can we please put our hands together for him, ladies and gentlemen? Your Excellency the Governor, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, who would have observed that when the pastor talked about paying teachers more, we had the biggest applause in this room. And when he talked about the teachers taking their work more seriously, some of the people who were clapping were busy on their phones. We just hope we will be able to balance these expectations as against the responsibilities that is expected of us. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning the process of winding down on the opening session of this two-day educational summit, x-raying the issues that really are finding faults, knowing what mountains to level and what valleys to fill. We're going to take a brief session of goodwill messages, 2 or 3 of them, and we'll invite the State Chairman of the Nigerian Union of Teachers, Comrade Etem Ukpong, to kindly come forward with the President of the All Nigeria Conference of Principals of Secondary Schools, Mrs. Rosalind Akwa Ibom. Both of them should please come out together so that they will speak one after the other. They will have 2 minutes and 3 minutes respectively, and in 5 minutes we expect that both goodwill messages would have been done. Please, let me announce that I'll be very strict in enforcing this because this event is on live television, which has a terminal time. There's a limit to the time that we have. So we will have to ensure that we do what we need to do in the time that we have left. After that, we'll take a representative of the promoters of education, and this will be a representative of the Inoy Foundation for a few minutes, and then one more before we wind down. Thank you very much. Let me invite the Chairman, Nigerian Union of Teachers, Akwa Ibom State, Comrade Etem Ukpong, to present the message of goodwill for 3 minutes. Can we please put our hands together for him? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Executive Governor of Akwa Ibom State. This one. You know, I'm not a very short man, so you have to help me manage the microphone. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, the Executive Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Mr. Goodwill Emmanuel, Your Excellency, the Deputy Governor of our dear state, Uncle Moses Ekpo, please you permit me to fall behind already established protocol. It pleases the Almighty God that on this day, the 5th of September in the year of our Lord 2019, His Excellency, the Executive Governor of our dear state, Mr. Goodwill Emmanuel, will make a clarion call to all other stakeholders in the education industry to gather here in an education summit. The essence is to take a harder look at the achievements so far recorded in the sector, the challenges staring us in the face, and the ways and instrumentalities needed to address them. The focus is for a better and greater Akwa Ibom. The end point is so that the product of our schools will be practical, self-motivating, and result-oriented personalities who can be leaders even at the global stage. Your Excellency, we appreciate you for causing this to happen. The National Policy on Education talks about a well-rounded personality as a product of our school system. But the politicization and trivialization of our education system, turning it into an instrument for interclass rivalry and superiority demonstration ground, has over time made nonsense of this lofty ideal. 2 groups stand out as those that make education. The learners are the first, the second are the teachers. The Nigerian Union of Teachers, NUT, as a union for all the teachers in Nigeria and Akwa Ibom State, thanks most sincerely His Excellency for giving us the quality of summit that we are going to witness in these 2 days. The passion which the organizing committee members, led by the indefatigable Secretary to the Government of the State, Dr. Emmanuel Ekuwem, and coordinated by the Honorable Commissioner for Education, Professor Nse Essien, have expressed, the unwavering commitment which they have demonstrated can only attest to the fact that this summit will go down as the next most sincere one. Your Excellency, some years ago we had a summit, and it was a great one. And when the recommendations coming from these discussions are fully implemented, it will definitely stand out as the very best. Because the recommendations the other time were very good, but sir, they were not implemented. History will therefore domicile this summit from the man whose vision conceptualized it, that is His Excellency, who in turn will drive the process of implementation, to all those who have organized it as those through whom the fortunes of education, and so the fortunes of the Akwa Ibom child, were turned around for a better tomorrow. As a man never known to say what he cannot conclude, no matter the amount of pressure, we know, Your Excellency, that before you directed the packaging of this summit, you were already set to wholly implement its recommendations. The teachers of Akwa Ibom are ready to go with you in your drive to put into action this vision of evolving a world-class education system for the state. 2 years and some months ago, you promised to do this. Here we are today witnessing it. Thank you, sir. To achieve this, the old traditional attitudes and methods of funding, of policy formulation and implementation, of monitoring, inspection and supervision, of rewards and sanctions, of inconsistency at all fronts, of contract awards to schools and execution, of methods of teaching, assessment and evaluation and results must give way. They must give way to a new, dynamic, modern, practical and result-oriented attitudes and methods. An own and unique system of education in line with our own felt needs as a community, even within the national framework, must evolve from here. This means that curriculum content, methods of teaching and learning, the school environment, provision of ICT, history, art, economics, science and technology, currency in knowledge on the part of the teachers that can stir the inner talents in our learners in line with 21st century pedagogy and needs, consistency in policy formulation and implementation, equipment of the ministry and the boards for effective, efficient, modern-day supervision methods, the welfare of the learners and that of the welfare of the teachers at all levels must be central and exclusive. Education, whether public or private, must never again be subjected to the vagaries of politics, politicking, and political patronage. Your Excellency, the teachers of Akwa Ibom once again say thank you to you for this week and for this summit. We thank the organizing committee members especially for the quality of topics for discussion, and welcome all the resource persons, guests, and ourselves to this great communion. We wish all of us fruitful lecture, presentations, and interactions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Etem Okpong. I will invite Mrs. Rosalind Ibom to please just take a minute. Of course, part of that Goodwill message covers the principles. So we'll just take a minute and say one or two things. Thank you.
His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Mr. Udom Emmanuel, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The courtesies have been established, and please I stand on those. Your Excellency, today I know and declare that truly you are a listening governor. On behalf of the principals and school heads, I thank you for accepting the many calls for an education summit. The constituents of the committee and the content of the program drawn up assures me.
Organization that over the past 10 years has been promoting education with the theme eradicating poverty through education. The promoter and the initiator of the Inoyotoro Foundation, Vice Chairman of ExxonMobil companies in Nigeria, but speaking on behalf of the Inoyotoro Foundation, Mr. Udom Inoyo. Can we please put our hands together for him, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you so much. His Excellency, just 2 or 3 things I want to say. As the old cliche goes, it is better late than never, so I must sincerely thank you for convoking this education summit. In the last 12 years, my wife and I and many well-meaning professionals from this state have really focused on the education sector in an effort to complement government efforts. We've come across many diligent teachers and principals, just as we have come across students who have been held back by the system. Poor student-teacher ratio, discrete facilities, officials that are unhelpful because they want to look good and they want to be politically correct always. But I must also thank you, His Excellency, for another reason. For the first time in many years in this state, I have seen a government official, I'm making reference to the Commissioner of Education, who in his address admitted before the governor that there is a problem in the education sector. I think that is a step forward. Because I remember in 2008, a serving commissioner of education attended an essential training for award-winning teachers and made a comment that the government has purchased laptop for all secondary school teachers. That was 2008. And the teachers that were in that capacity training, about 43 of them, said they were not aware. The commissioner said, in 2 weeks, you will get your laptop. It is 10 years. The laptops have not been delivered. So, a few things by word of recommendation. If you go to the website of Inoyo Toro Foundation, and we've been blessed over the years to have captains of industry, executive governors. Last year we had the head of service of the Federation. Our governor was a guest speaker. Malam El-Rufai was a guest speaker. All of them focus on this sector, and they have given us a lot of materials to use. 3, 4 things I want to recommend. At the end of this summit, please, there has to be an independent committee of experts to study the educational policy of the state and align it with current realities. Number 2, we must recruit, develop, reward, and retain effective teachers and principals. Adopt the model that is used in Finland. In Finland, they attract the best and the brightest into the education sector, not into the oil and gas sector, not into financial services. The best go into the education sector. Number 3, there is a need to create a significant financial support for teacher education, professional development, and supportive working conditions. 4, there must be an education policy that encourages attendance of public schools. And I must add, public schools with dormitories. Most of us learn discipline from dormitories. Number 5, we all rely on the West African examination. That is fine. But because of where we are heading, there has to be a baseline. And I want to recommend that Akwa Ibom State should participate in internationally known educational ratings, especially the Program for International Student Assessment. That will enable us to establish a baseline and know where we are heading. In conclusion, I know the governor is a thoroughbred professional, and I'm convinced that he will personally supervise the implementation of the summit outcome. His Excellency, if you do not, there will not be any traction. I thank you. God bless you.
Thank you very much. The last of the recommendations there, His Excellency the Governor, to personally supervise the outcome of the summit, the implementation of the recommendations. Of course, the very reason that he has actually convoked this summit and he's been sitting through here all day, and if we know him very well, you know he's going to give this all the attention that it requires. Thank you very much, Mr. Udom Inoyo. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, he speaks on behalf of the Inoyo Toro Foundation, and that foundation has over the last 12 years been rewarding teachers and contributing to education. We used to hear that teachers' reward is in heaven, but somebody once asked a question, what of teachers that do not get to heaven? Where would they be rewarded? So we're beginning to reward teachers here on earth. But then another person once said that there is no conscientious teacher that will not get to heaven. We're hoping that all of this will come to pass. Let me invite for the last of the Goodwill messages a gentleman who for 8 years had the privilege of serving as governor of this state, and who in the time that he was laid a foundation for the socio-economic advancement of Akwa Ibom State. He's over 80 years of age, and he's retired from public service, but he's not tired of making contributions, of speaking up for Akwa Ibom, of also making recommendations as to how we can leave this society much better than it was before we came here. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency, Architect Obong Victor Atta, former governor of Akwa Ibom State, for a brief message of goodwill. Your Excellency, please.
Your Excellency, the Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Your Excellencies, distinguished audience, I'll be very brief. And the first thing I want to say has been touched upon by what Mr. Udominoyo said about the laptops that are still waiting how many years later to be provided. And that is to say that government is very fond sometimes of playing politics with things that affect the society. But I warn that education is one of those things that government should not play politics with. That our governor has chosen to organize this summit shows me that he is determined that his government will not play politics with education. And I thank you very much. Now, also, I'm going to refer to a lot of things that others have said. Reverend Tia talked about public-private partnership. When I was governor, we started the process of handing back schools to the missions. And I thought it was wrong in the first instance to have taken those schools. I want to recommend, if that process has not been completed, please, Your Excellency, continue that process, hand back those schools, because the missionaries taught us moral rearmament, and they armed us with the things that has made us what we are today. So I think the process of handing back those schools with adequate compensation should be encouraged and continued. Now, the other thing I'd like to say is that we are still very, very superstitious in this society. I read only the other day that a father beat a 4-year-old son to death because he was a witch. What level of suspicion? Education should get rid of that sort of superstitious things that have been put into us. And believe me, if we do not get rid of superstition, we will remain primitive. Because when people are finding scientific solutions to issues, we think it is all has to do with juju and superstition. Finally, we are expecting that this summit will bring about what was described as a turnaround in our educational system. I want to address the parents. When this turnaround comes, please recognize the fact that a child needs absorptive capacity to be able to take in what is being taught. This business of rushing children from 4 years into primary school, by 9 they are in secondary schools. In advanced countries, I will tell you, a secondary school intake is described as 11 plus. What that means is that if school is starting today and you are going to be 11 tomorrow, you are not admitted. You must be 11 plus before you can enter a secondary school. And the people who determine that are not stupid. So rushing children into school so that you think you have a genius, you are wrong. Believe me, you create a situation in which that child cannot properly develop. So let's be very careful about some of these things that we do. So, ladies and gentlemen, I conclude by thanking our governor and all those who helped among this summit, and I do sincerely hope that the findings of this summit will bring about a change in our educational system and the way we look at education. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, that gentleman did not have to speak for very long, but then he spoke to the issues, and I'm sure it is something that we can relate with. Can we please put our hands together one more time for His Excellency, Architect Obong Victor Atta. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, please can we have some quiet, please? Let me invite the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Education, Akwa Ibom State, Mrs. Helen Ante, to kindly come forward, take a minute, and move a brief vote of thanks. And then, of course, His Excellency, the Governor, will be invited to speak and declare this session, the summit, open, and also make his speech at this event. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mrs. Helen Ante, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Education. Thank you.
Your Excellency, the Executive Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Mr. Udom Gabriel Emmanuel, every other very distinguished invited guest. Please, I wish because of time to stand on the already copiously established protocol. Thank you very much. I'm really very happy and honored to be asked to give the vote of thanks in this epoch-making occasion today. I really want to thank God Almighty for making Akwa Ibom State a very peaceful state, for us to be able to gather like this and rub our minds on what should go on and how we can help our education system. It does not happen this way in other states. So we want to thank God for the peace that prevails in Akwa Ibom State. And this is also because we have a peace-loving man at the helm of affairs, and kudos to you, Your Excellency, for that. I also want to thank you, Your Excellency, because you are an education-friendly governor. This Education Summit is actually your own initiative, and we really want to commend you and thank you for thinking well about the education sector. Thank you so very much. You sat through since morning, quietly listening. It means you're about to implement everything that shall be said in this summit. Thank you very much. The SSG, I also want to thank you. You have really championed the summit. Your wealth of knowledge and information has been brought to bear in the topics that has been selected, the men and women that will give, the men and women that have been invited to give different topics are also because you have known them and you have done a lot of research. You and your team is well commended. The State Executive Council is here backing His Excellency for what he's doing. I want to thank all of you, the commissioners, the head of civil service, for being here and appreciating what His Excellency is doing. The planning committee, I want to thank you. The resource persons, I want to thank you. Especially, I want to appreciate the person that gave the keynote address, Dr. Anyekeme Brown. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Thank you so much for your wealth of knowledge. As we listen to you, I know that in the education sector of Akwa Ibom State definitely will not remain the same. I want to thank members of the socio-cultural organizations that are here, our traditional rulers. All of you are here in your great numbers. I want to thank you so much for honoring the invitation to be here. I also want to thank all education stakeholders. ANCOPS, I appreciate you. Option, NAPS, NLC, WAEC, I'm sure WAEC is here. ENECO is here. NAPTEB officials are here. I want to thank you for coming to grace this occasion today. I want to specifically thank the teachers. We call them the foot soldiers. We call them the vision and the mission interpreters. We refer to them as the plowers of the field. We refer to them also as the sowers and harvesters of government-honorable policies in the education sector. We thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sitting in. Thank you for listening. It's our hope that you go back to implement the policies and all the things that will be said in this summit. I also want to thank other invited guests. Students are here now, please. PTA, the school-based management committees, women organizations, the youth, the parents, you're all here. We appreciate your presence. I also want to thank all of us that have been here, staff of the Ministry of Education, and all other civil servants that have come to test this occasion. Finally, I want to say a big thank you to all of you for finding time to bless the summit. Indeed, your presence and positive contribution will assist in moving the education sector forward. Thank you so much, and God bless us all.
We have lost the debate as we appreciate very warmly the family secretary. Thank you very much. Very distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We have had a very rewarding day at this first education summit, first of its kind in the history of Akwa Ibom State. We have come to the highest point, the zenith of this opening session for this two-day event. And it is that American pastor and preacher, John Calvin Maxwell, who is famous to have said that a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And we are very lucky to have a governor and a leader who has taken the daring, very audacious move of organizing and putting together this first Akwa Ibom State Education Summit, an exhibition for all the issues that are related to education to be very critically analyzed. Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time I have the singular honor to now most respectfully invite our leader, our governor, the education-friendly governor of Akwa Ibom State, His Excellency Mr. Udom Emmanuel, governor of Akwa Ibom State, as he steps forward at this event to deliver his remarks. Your Excellency, sir.
Greatest Nigerian students, you know we are gathered here because of you. Greatest Nigerian students, please shall we be seated. What a wonderful time for rain to fall. Can you hear me there? Students, can you hear me up there? Your Excellency, the Deputy Governor, Your Excellencies, former governors of our state, that I personally so much appreciate their presence and their advice and their contribution towards this summit. First, retired Air Commodore Otuekong Mbisongedowasenka and architect Obong Victor Atta. I really want to appreciate their presence here, the speaker, and all distinguished guests that are here. Permit me not to extend the protocol because this education summit, not a political gathering. I welcome all of you, and let me also especially thank those who have spoken before now. I so much enjoyed myself. If you check, I've had copious notes. I've not missed any point. Before I leave here tomorrow, I'm sure I would have finished this one, at least 2 of them. And be rest assured, I will go through them point by point. And I really want to thank them. Let me first of all commend the organizers. You know, it's one thing for you to have an idea. Another thing to have people that can run with that idea. We came up with this idea. Let me reassure you, we are not just doing one of those political gatherings. We are determined to change the structure, the content, and the output of educational system in Akwa Ibom State. You know, if you look at our initial, some points agenda that we presented, I made a comment that to me, education is an investment, it's not an expense. And a lot of people still don't know that as of today, we run free, compulsory education at basic level. A lot of people don't know until I now met the supervisors to be announcing that whenever we release grants to schools, let them also announce for people to know that we've actually provided those grants. Because of comments somebody made here, I think it was the keynote speaker, about the role of Parent Teachers Association. They must be known that we give those grants. When we pay for your WAEC fees, you should also know. Because these are resources of everybody. These form part of our budget that we must encourage people at basic education. So when I see a publication that Akwa Ibom has the highest number of dropouts, it does not tally with what we are running. If we are running free and compulsory education at basic level, we provide grants, we pay even for examination fees. At what point do we have the highest number of dropouts? It shows that what you said about statistics and information is completely different. This education summit is to address a particular infrastructure that any country, any state must look forward to, which is what I call the soft infrastructure. It is not enough for us to concentrate on those physical and hard infrastructure. The soft infrastructure is the human capacity. If we don't build human capacity, we are wasting time. Whatsoever we do cannot stand, because whatsoever stands must stand on people. God's gift to man is another man. So if you build man, you're already building a society. Unfortunately, I sat there with a burden in my heart, because when you hear a lot of problems of education, it's as if government is not doing anything. The answer is not that we're not doing something about it, but honestly, the problem with Nigeria is that we never plan for the kind of population explosion that is staring at our faces. When we were being warned as a country that population was growing very fast, we were encouraging that we should do more. There's no problem with that. So because the population has now completely outgrown the infrastructure, and then our end income, the growth in our income and our yield capacity is much lower than the growth in population, certainly there are bound to be these problems and crises in infrastructure. So what do? You must change the tactics, you must change the approach, you must change the strategies. And you cannot say we are the only country that have had this growth in population. The answer is no. I can't be waiting as a governor on the curriculum only from the federal for me to run a state that the population is staring at my face. I will not wait for that. I will not wait for only education policy that is up there for me to be able to move economically. So I must sit back with all stakeholders. What we are doing, we are going to create what I call a sense of urgency in order to drive this, because we want to create a structure that is enduring and is sustainable. And I must reassure you that we are committed and we will reach that goal. Let me also say here that when the pastor was giving a lecture, it was a mixture of both a pastor and a professor. Both of them start with P. Trust me, you were calling for people who are determined. I think we are determined in this case. We are. And I want to say here that government alone may not be able to do it. Let corporate bodies assist us. Let other individuals assist us. I made a comment one time, and I think Professor Nibogu said almost the same thing. A situation where an individual is parking the number of jeeps in his compound, some of them he doesn't even drive in 6 months. Any asset of such value that you don't touch over a long period of time, you're keeping another person's value. So you cannot afford to do that. You need to bring out that resource for us to actually do something. There's nothing wrong. Toro Foundation has set up an example. We can all have foundations too. even if you provide us with chairs. Let me also tell you what I read, I think in one of the social media, how pupils were sitting in, I think, floor or where. But let me say something here, which people I need to say it. In Akwa Ibom State today, we are investing seriously in renovating those schools. Let me take an example. We took Itam Secondary School, renovated the school, made it a sports center. The population grew astronomically. If you check Akwa Ibom today, because of the free compulsory education, a number of people who are non-indigens are schooling here. So once we renovate those schools, it doesn't take time for that population to grow. But that's not our problem. Our problem is we will continue to see how we can manage resources, to see how we can meet the needs of our people, because it is the duty of government to actually do that. But we are calling on private sectors to actually assist us. Individuals should also assist us. There's nothing wrong as an individual if you're well placed to just come. Even if you donate desks, donate books, donate or take some schools and sponsor payment of teachers' salaries, will go a long way to help us as a people. And a very critical point was made, I think by the executive chairman, vice chairman of ExxonMobil, that we must align the education curriculum with current realities. That is why we are here. I believe out of this summit, we will chart a course, whether Akwa Ibom State University is going to be a commercial university or a technological university out of this summit. I believe out of this summit, we will also determine what and what we need to do, whether it's in line with our needs. Let me give an example. We are not the first country to be in this situation. China had a population of 1.something billion. What did they do? They changed. People are trained when you leave school, you become an entrepreneur. We cannot be training people so that when you leave school, you are writing application for a job. You should be able to create jobs. That's where we'll know you've been trained. And we must look at what do we need to do? Who are going to teach these people? Where are we going to get them from? And we will also call on our youths, every stakeholder to also help us. Because already, I keep saying so, if you see us bringing one investor into Akwa Ibom State, it takes us 20 times the effort it used to take us before, because of what they call country risk. Because of what they call country risk. I don't want to go into a long story about that, but we are just having a similar experience right now. Even in terms of our investors in some of our, because of country risk, they back out at the middle of our negotiation. So we need to also talk to ourselves that where we don't have the technology, we must import. Where we don't have technology, we must borrow. Where we need to spy, we spy in a very religious way, Pastor. Not the type we were talking about in the class. In a very religious way of spying. So where we have to spy, we must spy on those technologies. Honestly. Because the situation I'm seeing right now, if we continue to train people, once you leave university, you are coming to harass me that you want to be the next local government chairman. You want to be the next councillor. You want to be the next member of the House of Assembly. How many people will be in House of Assembly? Only 26. How many local government chairmen can I have? Only 31. How many councillors can I have? Only 329. But how many people do we graduate in 1 year? In thousands. So we must actually look at that. I don't have any problem. We'll continue to write the WAEC. We'll continue to do whatsoever we'll do for international recognition. But we must have a homegrown educational system that will actually train our people so that they can be entrepreneurs, not those who will come out and harass us. So it calls for all stakeholders, all hands must be on deck. And I want to promise you that out of this summit, I will try as much as practicable to stay all through so that I can take notes. I don't want to rely on lecture notes only. You see, when I listen to a lecturer speak, my understanding will be different from what I'm going to read from his paper. So I can note something. You can never know it all. And then let's see how we can apply that to a situation. And after this, I want to promise, we'll break this into segments. We'll call a different segment, only primary schools, and tell them what are we going to do with primary schools. What are we going to do with primary education? How do we move forward? What do we do as government? Where do we start from? We will also take secondary school, address secondary school properly. After that, we take tertiary institutions and address them also. Let's see, where are we going to? And I'm one person who advocates that every single course in Akwa Ibom State University should have entrepreneurial training, because there's nobody who is a graduate who cannot also be an employer of labor. Every single course, every single faculty must have entrepreneurial training in that faculty, so that we can train people who will come and create value. We'll come and train people who will come and actually add value to the society, not people who will come and, as they said, you only have the certificate but you are not certified. We want to train certified people. Recently, I just released some funds so that we can get back to, I think he did it, the technical school that the former governor started. I want to refurbish that school and then put certain youths with the equipment and so on, and let's start and let's see what will come out of it as a pilot scheme towards where we are going to. And I'm happy Exit Mobile also made a commitment that the old technical college in Ikorakata is going to turn into skill development center. Let me say something here. In other societies, if you're calling a plumber to come and do something in your house, does he come trekking? The answer is no. He comes in his car, park the car, repair, finish, write you a bill, you write a check, and the guy enters his car and move. Meanwhile, he's just ordinary technician. So we must also raise our people. We must think that we can do it. Once the passion is right, nothing is impossible. We must create in us that state of urgency, that sense of urgency that we are going to do it. But I want a situation where, after we must have implemented this, if you run a program, you should be afraid in the afternoon. The greatest problem we are facing in Nigeria today is that if we are calling on youths at 2 p.m. sir, on a work day, you can get 50,000 youths. It shows that there's something wrong with the society. I shouldn't be getting 50,000 youths during work hours. I should be waiting until after work. Even after that work, I'll be scared whether they will be tired after the day's work. Why should I get 50,000 youths if I'm calling on youths at 2 p.m. on a work? They should be somewhere engaged. They should be somewhere managing their private enterprises. They should be somewhere doing something, creating value, helping others. Because if we don't build the economy, I'm sorry, democracy will not stand in Nigeria. Democracy in Nigeria will be anchored on the economy of this country. We must know that. So our budgeting system, as we are starting, we are beginning to do budget for 2020. So we want to see, in a 3-year development plan, what will our budgeting system be in terms of education? What do we do? How do we implement? Execution must be our watchword. And with 2 major attributes here, acceleration and speed. We must have that speed. We must accelerate as we execute. We must tell people that we mean it. And I want to let you know that I'll be in the forefront, and I really want to thank all our resource persons. We've also tried to bring people who are exposed to the outside world. We don't want to limit it only to Akwa Ibom people. Our faculties, people who will present papers, come across Nigeria. Let them also share experience based on what they've seen outside world. Your vision is limited to your exposure. So let's bring people who have also seen this work elsewhere. The whole idea of this summit is not just for us to come and speak and leave. It's for us to say what will work for us. How do we restructure? How do we anchor on a situation that is enduring? Which is also why I love the sustainable development goals about education. So we must get something enduring. We must get something sustainable. We must get something that must build human capacity in Akwa Ibom State. I felt so challenged when I started Ibom Airlines. I used to think we were still in those old glory when you enter Nigeria Airways and the announcement comes from the cockpit. They used to say, oh, this is Captain Fonudom, you know, flying Boeing 737. This is Captain Udom Emmanuel, flying Ibom Air. But I just got surprised that a whole lot of our people could not actually fit into that my business plan. So what do? You have to pause and reject the entire system and see how people can fit in. We couldn't get it. Are people not going to flying school? They are. And at times we just look at traditional approach of primary school, secondary school, university, you come out. But in other countries, once you finish high school, you are in flying school. Flying school, you go for rating. Rating, you start to fly. So, these are things that we need to also create so that our people can be engaged. We can also create a society that will really help us. I bet it, the way things are going, if we don't get these youths back to be engaged and to be busy, only God knows what will happen in the next 5 years. But we are determined to get all of them engaged, restructure, reorder, reorganize, create change, and then move forward with that. And I'm sure God will help us achieve our set goals. So I hope that please sit down, relax. Today is day one. I've told the organizers that we shouldn't keep you too long for today so that you can have the energy to come back tomorrow. Please, if you have somebody who's supposed to be here who had missed today's program, tell him not to miss tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be awesome because it's going to be the last day, which will close, and then we'll issue a communique. And for today, I want to thank all of you who made it down here. All the stakeholders are here. The parents are here because they have a critical role to play. And I keep telling people, whenever you see somebody abusing a teacher or abusing your father as a teacher, tell the person probably he doesn't even know his father's grave. Because I saw something by Toro Foundation. They say, if you can read this, do what? Thank a teacher. Every single person is supposed to be a teacher. If you don't teach in primary school, in secondary school, you will teach in your place of work. So many of us teach in our training schools. So many of us teach in churches, Sunday schools. So many of us teach in so many other places. So everybody has a role to play. And let me also say something here. The child education is more important because that's the foundation. So that is even done by the parents. What you do to your child before he leaves for secondary school will shape his future on his behavioral pattern. Look at the most successful people now on planet Earth today are mainly people who were brought up by teachers. Check. They were really thoroughly brought up by those crop of people. So please, let the parents not believe that teaching is only to those in the primary school. You have a lot to do. Churches have a lot to do. Traditional fathers have a lot to do. We must mentor one another towards a good and better Akwa Ibom State. Thank you and God bless you all. So on that note, I declare open this summit for this year in the name of God the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen. Can we please put our hands together for His Excellency, the Governor of Akwa Ibom State? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, the students. Thank you very much, please. Thank you. His Excellency, the Governor, after that speech and declaring the summit open, well, if you expected that the Governor would leave, I'm sorry to announce he's still here with us. He has not left and he's not leaving anytime soon. And in not too long a time, we'll take a break. And then, of course, we'll take all the activities that were lined up here for today. Can we please put our hands together one more time for His Excellency, the Governor? Thank you. His Excellency has said that he will sit. He already has told us he's been taking copious notes. If you look at him, you would know that, of course, he really has been doing so. And so without any further ado, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go into another presentation. And we're please hoping that all of us are not just here, but we're taking part. We're listening, we're taking notes, we're learning, and we're determined to do the best we can to contribute positively to the development and the advancement of our educational sector. And the topic for the third lecture, which we'll be taking, is teachers as role models in the art of teaching and learning. Teachers as role models in the art of teaching and learning. His Excellency the Governor has told us that each and every one of us, if we're not teachers already, at some point we'll find ourselves in a position where we have to teach. And I will agree that this particular topic concerns each and every one of us. I would please crave your indulgence to be attentive and be active participants in this session. The speaker who will be speaking on this topic is from the Department of Early Childhood and Special Education in the University of Uyo. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome Professor Quindolin Idongesit Obinaju, who will talk to us on this topic. Can we please put our hands together for her, ladies and gentlemen? I think that's the very first female voice you'll be hearing on this microphone today. Of course, there'll be quite a whole lot more after now. Prof.
Your Excellency, the Governor of Akwa Ibom State, I recognize you, Elder Udom Emmanuel, and please permit me to stand on already established protocol for today. It gives me real pleasure to be invited to speak on this topic, teachers as role models in the art of teaching and learning. To me, the topic is self-expressive because teachers, when you know the word teachers, they are role models and they should be more role models, except you are deceiving yourself that you are a teacher. But if you are a teacher by the word, then you are a role model. What is remaining for us to look at is in the in the art of teaching and learning. So as we are going to speak today, we will look at the various ways and avenues where a teacher can be a role model. The teacher training process and the practicing teachers, otherwise said the quality of teachers and trainees. The mentor-mentee system, the techniques of unleashing early passion to acquire knowledge. Once we do that, we will summarize, recommend, and conclude. Now, the role model in the art of teaching and learning. A qualified and practicing teacher serves several purposes. While he teaches, he imparts knowledge, thereby improving on the quality of the students cognitively. Socially, he endears them to himself. And psychologically, he enlivens in them the desire to be like him in the near future. He displays expertise by the knowledge of the subject matter. He just doesn't know the methods alone. He also knows the subject matter. He teaches with resourcefulness. He cites examples, contemporary examples, such that the students would be able to relate whatever he is teaching to what is happening around him, and not just quoting and then putting it back on paper for him when he sets an examination. He activates resourcefulness. That is to say, the student himself is going to be very resourceful. He taps from him. He motivates experimentation. Whatever that teacher is teaching, the students would want to experiment and test and see whether that is correct. In fact, any knowledge which is not used to solve a problem is worthless. As this teacher practices also, the younger teachers are observing and imitating him. He sharpens his own skill. He himself is benefiting from what he is doing because he resharpens his own skill. He corrects previous mistakes. Maybe he had made a mistake before, but as he is teaching, he is going to correct those mistakes. He explores new avenues. He makes new discoveries. And if we look at this, we discover that by his own method and by what he is doing, he is also learning and he's becoming better. Quality of teachers and trainers. Let me start by quoting a familiar sentence. in the national policy on education, no system of education can rise above the quality of its teachers. Teachers determine their products. Good and well-informed teachers produce high-flying graduates. Half-baked teachers, of course, in the contrary, breed mediocrity. At this point, I invite you and I to ask the question, what type of teacher am I? Am I a very good one? Or am I going to breed mediocrity because I'm a bad teacher? For the teacher training program, we would want to ask, what is the quality of teachers that we produce? I'm sure from the social media, many of us must have seen when an interview was conducted and a graduate of English was standing there and he was asked to write, as a teacher, it is my responsibility to prepare so and so. And he started by writing ASS, as a teacher. When she was corrected, it was a female actually. When she was corrected, she rubbed that off and then wrote ASK, ask a teacher. And then it baffled the panelists because they said, you are a graduate of English. They actually mentioned the university she came from. Please pardon me not to mention that particular university. Is that the type of quality that we are expecting? This is a certified teacher, or as my brother would say, certificated teacher, who has produced her certificate and wants to be employed. I would want to say that a teacher who cannot at least write one correct sentence, yes, we are going entrepreneurial, and then we are going into technical and production and so on. But whatever we are doing, we are going to express ourselves, and we are going to be able to explain so that we know what we are doing. We are going to use language at least to explain to our students. Let us ask ourselves this question. What is the quality of teachers that we produce? Who are those admitted into our faculties and colleges of education? What is the process of teaching them? How dedicated are the students to the program of study? What are the incentives laid down to retain them after graduation? If we answer these questions, then we will know exactly where we are heading. Is it when JAMB brings out its results, they will say those going to the university 180 and above, those going to colleges of technology 150 and above, and those going to colleges of education to be produced as teachers, they sometimes come as low as 140, 120. Whatever you bring in determines what you will take out. Even when they come into the faculty, some who may not have admission into engineering, medicine, law, then you hear them say, I can manage education. Education is not to be managed. Then they will plead and come in. Even when they come in, do they subject themselves to be properly trained? You send them out on teaching practice for them to get themselves prepared to be teachers. They don't pay attention to being a teacher. They don't go to school in time. You will hear many of them say, oh, when I was on industrial attachment, they would prefer to call teaching practice industrial attachment. What is the ego that they are using to call teaching practice industrial attachment? That obviously tells us that he is not proud to be a teacher. He would prefer to do industrial attachment and not teaching practice, because teaching practice is associated with being a teacher? Or is it after graduation and then they are employed, as the state government has just finished employing some? You hear them say, well, I'm marking time with teaching. I don't have a job yet. And so they will mark time for the rest of their lives. When somebody says he's marking time, is he going to put the very best into teaching? He says he is marking time. You go to schools, they are not yet there at 10 o'clock. The person who is supposed to make him be there and do what he's supposed to do, like the leadership of the school, many will not go to school and may go to school 2 times a week because they live very far away from the school that they are heading. Please permit me to say it as it is. Well, we may lament and lament over some of the things we see in the field, but it does not mean that we don't have good brains in education. We still have good brains in education. Those ones will qualify. Many of them will seek employment elsewhere and not in the classroom. Should they seek employment in the classroom, they stay there and get postgraduate degrees and seek to leave the foundation level and go up and teach in colleges of education, colleges of technology, and the universities. But which one is more important? I'm sure you will agree with me that the foundation is more important. If we have these best brains, irrespective of qualification, teach at the foundation level, and they are given their remuneration according to their qualification and their practice, I'm sure we'll have very many more qualified, very many more dedicated teachers teach at the foundation level, and we will have results. Please let me go to mentor and mentee system. The first question we'll love to ask is, what is mentoring? Mentoring entails a young worker patterning his life after an experienced worker, benefiting from the experience of an older person in the profession, making oneself better in the profession by observing and accepting advice or correction from the more experienced personnel, having an idol whom one would want to pattern one's life after. Check mentoring. Mentoring starts with one, the less experienced teacher depending on the more experienced teacher. It passes through autonomy when he has already imbibed what the more experienced teacher has done, has taught him, what he has observed, to being autonomous. That is trying to practice on his own. And after that, you discover that they become colleagues. Mutuality. They become colleagues, where I know what you know and I can try to be as good as you are. All of us, as we have accepted that a teacher, a good teacher, is a mentor. What are the qualifications of this mentor? He must be dedicated to his work. He must be willing to work with a younger and less experienced member of the profession. To the protege, a mentor is a supporter, a sponsor, a patron, a guide, a counselor, a protector, an encourager, and a confidant. If you are not all this to your mentee, then you are something else and not a mentor. To the mentee, what are the mentee's needs? A mentee has needs in the area of self-confidence, security, acceptance, friendship, relationship, illness resistance, collegiality and interaction, intellectual stimulation, in terms of the knowledge and the new ideas, invitation to see new ideas in the field, aesthetic experience, resolution of challenges, and techniques. Steps in mentoring. There is the initiator, and that is when you identify who you would want to pattern your life after if you are a mentee. Or if you are a mentor, that is when you realize who is patterning his life after you, who would want to observe you and follow your footsteps. That's the initiation. And there is a period of cultivation where both of you coexist for some time. He observes you. And then after he has observed you, you give him some practice, then you monitor how far he has gone. You monitor and give him some room. That is the period of separation. Give him some room to practice on his own. And that is the period of separation. You don't leave him on his own. You continue to monitor. And after that, you redefine what you should be doing, leave him some gap, and then there is a break up. After the break up, he now becomes your colleague, and there is a lasting relationship. That is like father-son relationship, mother-daughter relationship, and it lasts forever. When you are a good mentor, you can never quarrel with your mentee. You will always find reason to look for one another. That lasting relationship is very important. The need for mentoring. At each time a new staff is employed, there is need for mentoring. Mentoring helps the beginning teacher manage his workload and develop coping strategies. It also helps the protege to discover his strength and work on it to become an expert in the area. It helps the mentee to learn about how to adjust to individual differences. There is serious need to use mentoring as a training and staff development strategy. This I speak to Akwa Ibom State, because if we have mentors and then we have mentees in our schools, it will help us in staff development. Monitoring would also serve to ensure functionality and sustainability of the effect of mentoring. After that, let us look at techniques for unleashing passion and curiosity to acquire knowledge. I'm sure every teacher wants the students to learn. Then, if the student is not learning, I am told there is no teaching. I am convinced, and that is what I teach my students, that if you go out to teach, and then you examine, you discover that the students did not learn, then you have taught exactly nothing. So we should be very interested in techniques of unleashing passion and curiosity to acquire knowledge. We must enjoy our work and stop all manner of complaints. When we enjoy our work, we will be ready to sacrifice, to put in extra effort to do our work. Then the students will admire what we are doing. We teach for the students to see a relationship between what he is learning and the world of work, which is his eventual life. We are not teaching students who will remain in classroom forever. I remember a conference we had, and we talked about overschooling. And we said when they look for government work and they cannot find, he who has finished the first degree will go for masters. He finishes the first masters, he goes for a second masters, and so on and so forth. He remains forever in the classroom. If we teach for students to see a relationship between what he learns and the world of work. This particular aspect of our schooling will be dealt with. We emphasize opportunity and practice. We teach for students to grasp the needed skill and internalize the skill such that that skill becomes part of him. He doesn't have to start struggling and mending and maybe going for supplementary schools before he gets into practice. We have to praise and reinforce success rather than magnifying failure. We have to discourage as much as possible frustrating experiences. Where any frustrating experience comes, we should not allow it to last so that it doesn't discourage the student. We should set achievable assignments and assign responsibilities and encourage rotation of posts. There is no post that one person has to be there forever. Your Excellency, please permit me to start summarizing and winding down. In our discussion, we have seen that the teacher is unmistakably a role model. He is significant in his teaching, and while he is teaching, he also learns. The experienced teacher is essentially a mentor to the younger colleagues who needs his encouragement and support. The basic problem facing the teacher and the teaching profession lies in the intake, the initial intake, the formation process, and the lack of incentives to retain the best brains. By way of recommendation, I would want to encourage, especially as we are in this summit, that we should brainstorm on ways of retaining the best brains in education, such that our best brains would prefer to be in the classroom. We should also brainstorm on ways of getting these best brains to prefer to teach the foundation level and not want to go much higher. If the foundation is faulty, there is no way we would have the higher one and correct it. There will be no correction on top. The foundation has to be strong. I recommend that teachers should be allowed to teach across board. An adequate remuneration paid according to qualification and performance of the teacher. In addition, other motivational considerations should be given, like making the teacher to live close to the compound. You will agree with me that those days there were staff quarters in our primary schools. I'm not even going to secondary. In our primary schools, teachers lived on the compound. Special allowances according to location of the school, students' quality and population, reduce workload, and enhance emolument could also be applied. When we pay attention to the issues and suggestions discussed above, it is my conviction that the work of the teacher, who is already a role model, would be more desirable than what obtains at present. Thank you for your audience.
Very comprehensive lecture there, excellently delivered by Professor Quindolin Obinaja. I think she deserves another very big round of applause. Delivered with practiced timing and natural grace. Your Excellencies, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have gone a long way as far as this particular education summit is concerned, which is of course peopled by both the key lectures and the other panel discussions. And of course, I quite understand that many of us here are digesting every detail that are emanating from the speakers on this microphone. Let me invite my brother Raphael Edem to chart the way forward.
Thank you very much, Anekeme. Your Excellency the Governor, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this summit is a two-day event, of course, designed 2 sessions per day. And so we've listened to the keynote speech, we've listened to lectures, we've listened to insights and presentations, and even goodwill messages on how we can proceed. At this point, we will be taking a break for lunch, and the organizing committee, of course, have let us know that that break for lunch and lunch, of course, has been made available. And so we'll be taking a brief break. But His Excellency the Governor has requested all the people who came for this summit to kindly return here after lunch in about 45 minutes. That is going to be a 45 minutes break, so that we can proceed with the remainder of today's program, and then we can bring today to an end, preparatory to tomorrow. So distinguished ladies and gentlemen, 3 o'clock is when the summit would reconvene, and His Excellency the Governor has promised that he will be back here also with us so that we can go through the rest of today's program. And so, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this was the opening session of this event. We're going to bring this to an end, and we'll request that before we proceed to lunch, all of us should please rise for the national anthem as we bring this opening session to an end. National anthem, please. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please endeavor to be back here before 3 o'clock. Thank you very much. The brass band will provide some music interlude, and then we will proceed for lunch.
Abasibom bio Akwa Ibom, Yakibo fono forever, Yakirong yinaba kememo, Afrewe ni seria, Menyamuru aya mekuro, Ejeri uba udumino, Remember Karanyino, Boy Karanyino, Ipo won't go and Barawo Ipa, Baba God, now you be the boss, I throw a salute to, thank you for the beautiful.